Ever since you were a child, you were told certain things aren't real. Ghosts, angels, demons, vampires, werewolves. The monster under your bed, the one in your closet. It's a comforting thing we've all been told all of our lives. But what do you do when you find out that the monster under the bed isn't so imaginary? What do you do when you find that the devil is real? Sometimes people find these things out, and that's when they come to me. Join me, Kevin Mears, demonologist, for a look at the paranormal on my new YouTube video, Paranormal Encyclopedia. We're going to be talking about the things that go bump in the night and why sometimes there really are such things. Good evening and welcome again to another episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia. I'm your host, Kevin Mears. So we've talked about angels, we've talked about demons, we've talked about Jesus, we've talked about a lot of different things so far. Time to go to the top, or perhaps if you like the bottom. We're going to talk about the devil himself. Sometimes known as Lucifer, sometimes as Satan, sometimes as the Prince of Darkness. He has a lot of names and a lot of cultures. But we're going to be talking about him. We're going to talk about what the Bible has to say about him. We're going to talk about how often people actually run into him. It's not as often as some people seem to think. So, is there a devil? Is there a Satan himself? The Bible itself is very clear on this matter, certainly. There are people these days that try and argue, oh no, those verses are all being symbolic. They don't mean an actual devil. But there's nothing in the Bible that suggests that the devil isn't a person. Both the Old Testament and the New Testament refer to Satan. Although it's interesting that the roles tend to be a little different between the two books. If you look at the book of Job, for example, in Job 1:6, it tells us that one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them, implying certainly that Satan's in heaven. Now, in Jewish tradition, it's generally thought that Satan is God's prosecuting attorney. Not that he's prosecuting God, that he prosecutes man before God. He is the slanderer, he is the accuser. He's the one that goes to God. People aren't good enough. Certainly you see this in the book of Job in particular. Later that Satan got brought into this idea of the fallen angel and as the enemy of God, not just the enemy of man. But originally, he's the accuser of man. He is God's prosecuting attorney when he's putting man on trial. Certainly, there are other figures in Jewish lore, and I'm going to use some names more often than I might normally, like Asmodeus is commonly referred to as basically the Satan figure, the leader of the demons. The book of Enoch, which, as we talked about before, is a Jewish apocryphal book that deals with the idea of fallen angels. Talks about Samael, who again is the leader of these fallen rebel angels. Certainly Christians didn't invent the idea of Satan, but really it became the most prominent with the Christians and with Jesus Christ himself. Jesus talked about the devil many times. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about who the devil really is. And again, there's a lot of misconceptions about Satan. Why don't I start with that before I start going into what's true? First, while it's true that the devil is the greatest force of evil in the universe, the devil is a created being. He's one of the angels. He's one of the archangels. But this idea that the devil is everywhere or that the devil can do certain... He isn't as powerful as people think he is. The famous joke, the devil made me do it. No, it's a joke. It was always meant to be a joke. This is not a part of Christian theology. The thing to understand about the role of the devil, particularly in the Bible, is you want to look at the book of Genesis. You want to look at the story of Adam and Eve. The serpent, who Revelations makes clear is the devil, we're going to be talking about that, tempts Eve. He persuades Eve to eat the fruit. He doesn't hold a gun to her head and say, "You're going to eat the fruit, lady." She has to make a choice. The devil doesn't make people do things. In the case of possession, it's a different issue. But he tempts, he suggests, just like the idea of the angel on your shoulder worshiping, whispering the good ideas, and the demon on your shoulder. That's what you're dealing with. It's not this idea that the devil's making people do things. If somebody says the devil made them do it, no, he didn't. You made your own choice. Even as we're going to see in possession, people become possessed by an act of their own will. They don't get possessed. They don't accidentally become possessed. Certainly, the demons, I should say, have more control in that case, which is another thing we should talk about. The devil doesn't personally possess people very often. Does it happen? Yes. The Bible's clear. On at least a few occasions, it's happened. So the one absolute clear case in the Bible where the devil possessed somebody, you can find in Luke 22:3, where it says, "Then Satan entered into Judas, called Iscariot, who was numbered among the 12." The Bible says Satan entered Judas. It's pretty clear cut. Most of the other times it was demons or devils that possessed people, not Satan himself. Again, the kind of thing to realize here, because there's a lot of evangelicals in particular who think the devil possesses people personally all the time, is the devil is the leader of the forces of hell. He is the commander-in-chief. He's the president. He doesn't have time to go running around and possessing random people. Yet he is trying to organize a concerted worldwide effort. Does he possess people personally? Yes, certainly it does happen. There's certainly evidence that Adolf Hitler was demonically possessed. It's argued that Lucifer himself may have been the one possessing him. No one really knows for certain. I actually am personally inclined to think, and we'll get into this down the road, that while Adolf was certainly possessed, probably someone else in his administration was possessed by Satan. Hitler himself made a lot of tactical blunders, and the devil's incredibly intelligent. It's improbable to me personally the devil would have made some of the mistakes that Hitler made. To be clear, I am not saying that Hitler being possessed is why he did horrible things. No, Hitler did horrible things, and that's why he was possessed. It's not the way it sounds, it's the other way around. It's that when people do horrible things, and genocide is as horrible as they come, it opens themselves to demonic possession. It doesn't absolve them of guilt. It's their own actions that it's their evil. That it's these murders on such a grandiose scale that can cause a situation. His actions made him possessed. Possession didn't make him do what he did. That was his own choice. And like I said, the devil doesn't make people do things. The devil tempts. The devil suggests. The devil convinces. People make their own choices. You're responsible for your own actions. To blame it on the devil completely washes away the entire Christian concept of salvation and sin. If somebody else is responsible for everything you do wrong, why are you going to be punished? Why are you being held accountable for it? That wouldn't make any sense. Think it through, folks. So we've talked a little about what the devil isn't. We'll talk some more about that. Let's talk about who the devil is. And let's talk about Lucifer and Satan. Are they the same person, or are they different people? Well, the Bible's very clear. Like I said earlier, Job 1:6 makes it clear that the devil was in heaven at one point, or may still be, depending how you interpret things. Now, the concept of the fall you're going to find particularly in Isaiah and Ezekiel. Isaiah 14:12, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. Art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north, and I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High, yet thou art brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Now, as some of you will probably know, that verse is referring to actually a king of Babylon. But is it just referring to this king of Babylon, or is it actually talking about something else as well? Well, it's talking about him going to hell. It's talking about him being brought down to the sides of the pit. It's saying he's fallen from heaven, not just from the earth. I would argue, and this is a common Christian argument, yes, it's talking about the king of Babylon, but it's also addressing the power behind the throne. It's talking about Satan, or Lucifer, as he was known before he fell, who was influencing the king of Babylon at the time. The verse is referring to two beings at the same time. This is further borne out by Ezekiel. Ezekiel 28, verses 11 through 13 say, You were the signet of perfection, full of wisdom, perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. This is supposed to refer to the king of Tyre. But the king of Tyre wasn't in the Garden of Eden. He didn't have every precious stone. And if you keep going through chapter 28 of Ezekiel, up to verse 19, it talks about it goes more and more into all these amazing, elaborate things that were covering this being. It's not talking about an ordinary person. Again, it's talking about the king of Tyre on one level, and it's talking about the power behind the throne on another. So yeah, what I'm saying here is basically the name Lucifer was his angelic name. Lucifer comes from Latin, it means bringer of light. It also is a name for the morning star, hence, how fallen art thou, O morning star. He falls, he becomes Satan, he becomes the adversary. And in Hebrew, it's Hasatan, which is the adversary. Satan just itself means adversary. Hasatan means the adversary. The adversary makes it clear we're dealing with one person, not as some people occasionally suggest that it's just a generic term for anyone who opposes the devil, anyone who opposes God. It's someone specific. And the Bible is clear in many other passages. You're dealing with a specific intelligent being, not just some impersonal force out there, or some part of your own nature. Let's look again at some of the other things the Bible has to say. Revelations 12:9, and the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, who deceiveth the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown with him. Again, clearly talking about a being, a specific being, not some amorphous force. And there's something else really important to realize here. Like I said, it's talking about Satan as the serpent and the dragon. There's a common misconception. People say that Christian Satan was based on the Greek god Pan. He wasn't. Artists in the Middle Ages and later used the appearance of Pan, the goat legs, the horns, for Satan. The Bible doesn't describe Satan that way. It calls him the serpent. It calls him the dragon. Doesn't sound remotely like Pan. Now, if you look at the ancient world, there are a number of serpents before Christianity that are seen as wicked. I mean, obviously, there's the serpent in Genesis, who I've just been saying is, in fact, Satan. In Egyptian mythology, there's a being called Apep, or Apophis, serpent that chases the sun, seeking to devour it. In Norse mythology, there's a serpent Jormund that encircles the world and will fight Thor in the final days. Again, a wicked serpent being. It's not a uniquely Christian image. that serpent, the devil, or this great force of evil, at least, is taking the form of a snake or a serpent. There are certainly cultures that see snakes in a more positive light, but it's not uniquely us on the either. Excuse me. So here, there's another thing to keep in mind about the way that the Bible describes Satan, and this is the one that throws a lot of people, both Christians and non-Christians. And you can find this in 2 Corinthians 11:14. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Satan can appear as a beautiful being. And think about it, this makes sense. If demons and Satan always showed up as these horrible, monstrous beings, everybody would know who they were dealing with. Throughout history, there have been Hitler, for example, occasionally used religious imagery. Some of his followers certainly used religious imagery, and claiming that they had a divine purpose. Again, this is a huge subject to go into in its own right. Hitler talked about seeing himself on a divine mission. He talked about he had prayers modeled on the Lord's Prayer distributed among the Hitler youth, that these children were supposed to pray that didn't honor God, didn't honor Jesus, they honored Hitler. And look at what we were talking about in Isaiah, where it says, I will be like the Most High. I will ascend my throne above the heavens. This is where we find the origins of Lucifer's fall, why he fell. Satan wanted to be God. He thought God wasn't good enough. He thought he could do a better job. He said, I'm going to be like God. I will put my throne above the heavens, above the stars. And he got, in Revelation 12:7-9, the Archangel Michael, like we talked about in the episode about holy angels, cast him down. Now, he certainly has certain freedoms, and he certainly can wander the earth. And we're warned that to be sober and vigilant before the devil, your adversary, the devil, wanders about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. But again, if you're dealing with an evil spirit, it's probably not Satan. He is out there. He is organizing the forces. But if he's going to get involved, the fate of nations are going to change. Satan got involved with Judas Iscariot. Satan got involved with tempting Christ. Satan got involved with the Nazi Party, with Stalin. He's gotten involved with monsters, mass murderers on global scales. He doesn't show up and possess Mary Sue down the street. He has more important things to do with his day. Satan is a created being, and this is an important thing to understand. If he is somewhere, because he's a finite being, he's not omnipresent. God is omnipresent, which means he's everywhere at the same time. If Satan is in one place, that's the only place in the entire universe he can be. Think that through the next time, the evangelicals who might be out there watching this and thinking I'm out of my mind because you think you run into Satan every other week. Think that through. If he can only be in that one place at any given time, why do you think you're that important? Why do you think the person he's possessing is that important? Satan has many demons out there doing his work. They answer to him, and some of them call themselves Satan. There's some speculation among demonologists about why this is. Some people suggest that it's a rank, that some spirits in hell that reach a certain level get to call themselves Satan or Lucifer. I personally, because of my own experience, think demons just put on airs. There's also a very important old concept that we will revisit often, and I've already talked about this, that when you give something recognition, when you refer to a being by name, particularly, and the Bible supports this, and we're going to get into that down the road, you draw its attention and you give it power. So when a demon calls itself Satan, it's trying to get you to call it that, to give more energy and more attention and more recognition to the actual devil himself. It's not because the demon's the devil. That's about everything I've got to say. Like I said, this and the last episode were a little more biblical than usual. I'm going to start trying to move away from that to a point. I'm going to be talking about ghosts soon. We're going to start going over how to conduct a paranormal investigation, what to do if you think your house is haunted. I hope you'll stay with us. I want to do a little bit of side promotion here. If you all would go take a look, there's a new set of videos just coming out. The first one's up today. She's working on another one now and should have that up soon. It's called Lumia Presents. It's a series of movie videos by my fiance, Amisha Campbell. They're very good. She's a producer on these. She's the one responsible for all those cool old pictures. They get inserted. She did the title card. She did my credits. She's the reason I look as good as I do. I highly recommend you check out her videos. The first one is up. It's a review of a very good movie called Julia and Julia. Sorry to say her next movie up, which is Escape from Tomorrow, isn't nearly as good a movie, but it should be a really great review at least, and have a little bit of fun at what could have been a great movie. We are going to be joining forces coming up in December, or not, excuse me, not December, in October, to talk about some horror movies, but that's still coming down the road. I also want to say, surprisingly enough, you guys may want to check out, there's a movie out that was filmed back in 2013 called An Exorcism of Evil. It's actually starring me. During an interview I gave some time back for a documentary that never quite gelled. The movie is what the production company decided to do with the footage, because they wanted to do something with it. It came out pretty well. I can't say I'm entirely thrilled with the way the movie looks, but I think my interview was handled pretty well. I like what they did with it. Feel free to check it out. You can find it on Amazon Prime. You can find a trailer for it here on YouTube. But that's about it for tonight. Thank you so much and have a great evening.